Okay, you will have 9 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Mike Waddell. I'm the Land Use Chair for the East Cesar Chavez Neighborhood Plan Contact Team, and supported by Ryan Saunders and Bill Hamilton, our ECC sector reps. I also just want to note that I'm a fourth-generation Austinite, and I've been a resident of East Austin on Willow Street for the last 20 years. I care deeply about our city, our communities, and our quality of life. And professionally, I lead the design and planning of complex commercial developments. I understand our land development code, building systems, and acoustics at a high level, which leads me to what I'm here to support. So the East Cesar Chavez Neighborhood Plan Contact Team is here to support the Planning Commission's draft ordinance to lower the decibel level from 70 decibels to 45 decibels where compatibility is. Generally, we are pro-housing, we are pro-affordable housing, and I think one of the things we are constantly trying to strive for is improving the quality of life for our residents and neighbors. We pushed for an amendment that was supported by Ryan Alter's team to basically make compatibility still apply along alleyways when the compatibility rewrite was up, and so we'd like to thank you for that support. So I wanted to talk today about the noise issue impacting our neighborhood. So the first thing I just want to start with is what is 70 decibels? So this is what our current compatibility and DB90 code allows at residential districts. It is considered loud. It's the sound of a vacuum cleaner from 10 feet away. I'm sure if I was running a vacuum cleaner right here, you would all be annoyed. It's also the sound limit level of outdoor amplified sound permits that our neighborhood group issues to bars and restaurants. We issue those permits with set hours to ensure nighttime quiet for our residents, whereas mechanical equipment will run 24/7, 365. Further, there has been numerous research reports on the health impact of noise. In fact, the World Health Organization has identified noise as the second largest environmental cause of health problems just after air pollution. So the World Health Organization recommends 40 decibels or less outside of bedrooms to prevent adverse effects from night noise. And you just heard from one of our neighbors on Willow Street who is struggling with that issue at her residence, which is a block away from a new development. So in the support of the rewrite of the compatibility ordinance, city staff went through a benchmarking process where they looked at 14 of our peer cities to see how does Austin compare in terms of compatibility and density adjacent to residential districts, and we commend that effort. I think what was missing from that study was looking at the quality of life measures that those cities have also taken when we're increasing density adjacent to residential districts. So if we looked at those same 14 peer cities, we would find 12 out of 14 of them are more protective against noise pollution than our 70 decibel limit. They're either explicitly lower code limits, often with separate daytime and nighttime limits, or qualitative code, which would result in a much lower limit. So if we average those cities' noise codes, we'd get 58 decibels during the daytime and 52 at nighttime. And then I just want to point out that I know there are concerns about lowering the noise limit and the impact on development and density. New York City, our nation's densest metropolis, redid their noise code in 2007, and they set a noise level limit of 45 decibels as measured from an open door or window at a residence. So if our nation's densest city can do it to balance quality of life with development, I think we can as well. So I know city staff is reluctant to adopt Planning Commission's recommendations on the decibel limit. They've replied that they believe screening is the most proactive way to mitigate noise and that lowering the limit could lead to unintended consequences. So I want to address those points. So this is the new project that Leslie was speaking to a minute ago. And I would say on the whole, this is a beautiful new commercial development. It's the kind of development we want to see in our area. Unfortunately, what this project does is it really shows the loopholes in our code for screening and noise and the ability to really negatively impact a community. And so this project right now has 250 tons of rooftop mechanical equipment that are positioned at the rear of their roof with the exhaust fans pointed directly at the neighborhood with no screening or parapets blocking that noise. So let's look at how this is allowed to meet code. So the current code measures the view from the property line or alleyway. And so thank you, District 5, for getting that alleyway in there. And so basically what this means is that if you're standing at your fence line at your house and you look up and you don't see any equipment, it passes code. It would receive a permit. But what it also means is that you could walk 10 feet back in your yard, look up and see the mechanical equipment completely exposed with sound unabated. And so what does this actually look like in reality? So this is a view from one of the backyards on Willow Street where you look up and you can see all 5 of those 50-ton units, which are operating 24/7 at a high level. What you can also see in this photo are louvers for garage exhaust fans. So one of the things that screening code cannot address is the sound emanating from louvered exhaust fans. And there are many examples downtown where this sound pushes 70 or 80 or even 80 decibels. So the code as written does not result in any meaningful screening that mitigates noise. So just, we were, I would say the neighborhood probably logged 50 311 calls within a week. We were able to meet City Code Inspector Aaron Hagel out here, and he walked around the street and took many, many measurements. And one of the interesting things he found is that he actually recorded the sound level exceeding decibels at this house. But then when he went to the fence line where the property is, it was under the code limit. So our screening code actually allows the sound to exceed our code levels at a residence, but not where it's measured for code. And then just getting back to the health impact of noise, this property, those are kids' bedrooms up there. That equipment is just blasting their bedrooms. So there was an outcry from the neighborhood of concern. The neighborhood plan contact team sent out a noise impact survey to gauge what the real impact was on the neighborhood and how far that reached from this building. And so so far we've had 25 respondents from as far as 1,000 feet away. So this isn't something that just impacts neighbors across an alley or neighbors next door. It's something that has the potential to reach a broad number of residents in a neighborhood. So the results of this survey, one of the things getting back to quality of life, 88% reported being impacted with outdoor activities at their home. It's unbearable to be outside with this equipment running at that level. And then back to the health impacts, 72% had reported increased stress and anxiety, and then 40% experienced sleep disruption and are trying earplugs, white noise, anything to just get through the night with a good night's sleep. And so I'd like to just touch on the unintended consequences of the staff's draft ordinance of keeping the decibel limit at 70 decibels. Our screening code that we're advocating to be the right change to address this issue does not actually create rooftop screening that mitigates noise. That code can also not mitigate the noise from louvered exhaust fans. It doesn't work. And then it also just shows that 70 decibel limits can exist on a residential property even with that code in place. So screening can't really address this problem. And then what we'd like to highlight is what we would call the intended consequences of Planning Commission's draft ordinance. So the intended consequences is neighborhoods would have peace and quiet, there'd be improved health and well-being for our communities, and developments would need to consider their impact on their neighbors. And I think as a result of a lower sound limit, rooftop equipment would be screened if it needed to be screened. And so really the only way to really ensure lower noise limits is to lower the noise limit. It seems pretty straightforward. And then one thing that we are always sensitive to is we don't want to be proposing things that saddle developments or developers with unnecessary burden. And so in looking at those 12 out of 14 peer cities, they've been able to make it work. New York City's been able to make it work. In fact, there are 2 new 3-story office buildings that also make it work.
Thank you so much.
Is that 9 minutes?
Yes. Next speaker, please.
Next, we have Carlos Pinon.